Hello everybody, today the last in my current series of wonderful classic cars from the good people at Retro Classic in Yorkshire. Now I suppose for some you could say that I have saved the very best till last, because this is not the cleanest or tidiest or most powerful car that I've driven this week, nor is it even the most expensive, but it is by far the most unusual, and it is something of a general rarity. You see, this is a 1967 Mustang Coupe with the 390 big block in it. Now I don't know about you, but for me it is impossible to separate an American classic car from its engine. It is the very beating heart of a car, and Americans are rather obsessed with engine codes and what they mean, different carburetor setups, all that sort of jazz, and it's part of the appeal of that whole world. This is what is known to Mustang aficionados as an S-code car, the S denoting that 390 cubic inch, about 6.4 litre, 4-barrel Holley carb motor up front. In the year of this car's production, this was the largest capacity, most powerful engine you could get in a Mustang. And this is also the top trim level of Mustang too. This is a GTA. The GT itself features a number of upgrades, including styling ones, lights, a bonnet, wheels, and performance. The disc brakes, all that sort of lovely jazz, plus some interior additions. But to be quite honest with you, I'm really not an expert in this kind of car, so I can't tell you how it stands out versus a normal one. That's the sort of thing that Sam and Adrian at Retro Classic Car can do, so if you're interested, speak to them. The A in GTA stands for automatic transmission, a very popular upgrade for these cars at the time. And this week, having driven a mixture of both manual and autos, I have to say, if you're looking for an easy car to use, there is a lot to be said for the automatics. And when partnered with such a big, free-breathing engine such as this, they still move, at least as well as you'd expect any car of this vintage. It makes the right noise too, let's be honest about that. It also drives really quite nice, perhaps a little bit better than the 68 Camaro that I've just come out of. Now this car is in interesting condition. It's what you might term a survivor, or what in America they might call a driver car. What does that mean? Well, it's not perfect, at least not cosmetically. And for fans of Bullet, and I'm sure there are a few of those out there, no, this isn't quite the same, as that car was a fastback. I think the fastback is prettier, let's be honest. But from the sort of cab forwards, this is ultimately the same. The Bullet was a GT, and so is this, apart from the automatic bit, of course. Mechanically, it's very decent, but there are certainly things that you could fix. However, the car is not exactly at the edge of falling apart. It still runs and drives very nicely. And so I wouldn't want to restore it. I personally would keep it as it is. I'd fix a couple of little bits. I'd do perhaps a few bits of preventative work, but otherwise I'd try and leave it as close to what it is now as very possible. If you restored it, you'd have a car worth quite a bit more money. This one's up for £33,000, but restored, probably another £10,000 on top of that. And if this car were a fastback, it'd be worth about 60,000 quid in good nick, making this at £33,000 something of a bargain. Compared with the Mach 1 fastback that I drove much earlier in the week, this is a very nice and easy car to drive. Not that that one was particularly difficult, but visibility was very compromised. This one is infinitely better, meaning I can actually see out the back of it. The thing that's coming most to mind is the Oldsmobile 442 that I drove not too long ago on the channel. In real time, it's only about a week or so ago, and on paper you'd think they were kind of similar, but in reality they've got a very different feel. The Olds is a much bigger car, and it certainly feels it. The disc brakes on this car do work nicely, and as long as you don't expect miracles of them, they'll bring the car to a halt, no trouble at all. Engine is very tractable, and that automatic gearbox means it's got great pickup, so for moving around at reasonably low speeds, it's perfectly well equipped. But you want to know what it sounds under full throttle, don't you? And I am more than happy to oblige. Oh, it's really got legs. This is as fast as anything else that I've driven this week. Now, officially, this engine's putting out something like 320 horsepower, but that was under the old American rating system. Reality, I'd be surprised if it's putting out about 250, but honestly, it's fine. It's perfectly fine. I love this lime goldy kind of colour. I'd call it a sort of sage, or perhaps even a light forest green, maybe a highland green colour. Really suits this car. There's plenty of space in it, and you've got a lot more room in the back than, say, the equivalent Camaro of the time. It does feel somehow a little bit of an older car versus the Camaro too. The instrumentation and things in here do feel just a bit more ancient. Power steering, another standard feature on the GT and GTA. Very light, as you might expect. There's a little bit of feel to come through it, but honestly, I think if you're expecting any sort of real handling or dynamics from this car, you're looking in the wrong place. This is a car all about the looks and the noise, and that is a common theme with all of the vehicles that I reviewed from Retro Classic Car, with one or two notable exceptions. And actually, of all the classics I've driven, this is one of the easier to drive at modern speeds. About 50 mile an hour for me is its happy place on this kind of road. You've got a great view of the bonnet, and you can place the car with relative ease. Helps, of course, that I've got a couple of cameras on it, and I'll also give these wipers an award for being some of the more useful that I've driven this week. Now, the one on the right's only putting in a little bit of effort, but Lefty here is certainly working overtime, and that's fine, because that's where I'm sat, and I'm the one that needs to be able to see. So that's all right. I've just noticed this chrome strip here on top of the window too. Seems entirely unnecessary and therefore entirely appropriate. I must say, I'm not really a big fan of vinyl roofs. Very, very common thing in the 70s. Loads of Fords were blighted by them, and clearly it was something they did in the 60s too. This was an optional extra. I don't know quite where the fascination with a vinyl roof came from and why people decided that it was worth paying extra to put a load of cheap material on top of what would otherwise have been nice paint, but there you go. I suppose I can't really complain, being a citizen of 2020 with the odd styling decisions that we seem to have become fond of. One other thing I certainly would rip out of this car straight away is the awful looking JVC head unit, which would be right at home in an MG ZR, not a 1960s Mustang. The simple fact is, if you want a classic Mustang cheap, this is not the car for you. If you're the sort of person that simply wants to say you own a 1960s classic American car, it wouldn't make sense. This car's value is in its rarity, and so for that reason you need to be somebody that really appreciates what it is. And it does drive genuinely nicely. It's a very special feeling car. You can tell that it's had some love where needed, but you can also tell that it needs perhaps a little bit more. I'd see this not so much as a purchase, more an adoption, or perhaps a fostering even. Driving this car is a thoroughly pleasant experience. Some of the classics I've driven this week, notably the 68 Camaro, were a little bit of hard work, and that can on occasion take the joy out of it. Now, maybe the inclement weather hasn't helped, and a lot of the time I'm doing things that these cars aren't built for, mucking around, going backwards and forwards over the same stretch of road. But driving this is an enjoyable task. I would happily drive this most of the way home. I don't think the heater works. Don't take my word for that, because it's got a system of controls down here that make little to no sense to me. But yeah, I'm sure it's easily fixed. One thing that does impress me with a lot of these old cars, the turning circles are amazing. But big old barges are really rather good. And there we have it. That is the end of my little special series on beautiful old classic American cars. If you have something of this ilk and you'd like to see it on the channel, please do drop me a line. The details of how to do that will be in the description of most of my videos. And if you're interested in buying this or something very much like it, please do give Sam or Adrian or one of the team at Retro Classic Car a call. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to help. Tell them JayEmm sent you, and they'll be thankful, I'm sure, as will I. And for now, don't forget to like, comment below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you all for the next one. Bye bye.